Here are 10 things that you can do as a student to drastically improve your rate of learning using AI that aren't considered cheating. If you don't know who I am, my name is Katkov. I'm the founder of UofTearless. Back in 2024, I went from my lowest grade ever, a 37%, to the top 4% of all first-year psychology students at my university, while only studying 2 hours a day across all of my courses. Now, obviously, you don't want an academic strike, so use all this information at your own discretion and don't use AI to cheat. The first one is explanation of ideas. So you can always ask AI to explain a concept if you don't understand it. The trick with this is being specific and not just saying, explain this to me. I'm sure if I asked you, you'd be able to tell me what AI is and how to use it. But to use it properly, it's actually a lot more complicated than you might think. As a quick summary, AI works on instructions that you give it. The technical term for this is called chain prompting. Now I have this quote that might help you understand the difficulty of chain prompting, and it's that AI will give you golden nuggets every single time as long as you tell it where to pan, how to pan, what a pan is, how to hold it, how long to do it for, what gold is, why you want it, and what to do with it when it gets it. Most of the time when people tell AI to write me something, it will spit out this very vague kind of arbitrary answer and is not specific at all. Being good at chain prompting is being able to draw the specifics out from AI, and it all depends on how you ask the question. For instance, instead of saying something like, I don't understand how the mitochondria functions in a cell, because you don't know a lot about biology, but you do know a lot about cars, you could say something like, explain how the mitochondria functions in the cell at the level of an 8th grader in 30 words or less in the context of cars. It would then spit out something like, certainly, the mitochondria is essentially the engine of a car. Imagine the cell is the car and the mitochondria is the engine. The second thing you can use it for is connecting concepts. So if I have a term and a second term, I can use it to bridge that connection. Now, it's very good if you actually are able to do this yourself, but if you're on a time crunch or you just can't make the connection for the life of you because it's complicated material, it helps to have someone or something explain that to you and make that connection for you so that you can understand how that information fits into the context of what you're learning. Long-term memory is formed by connecting new things to old things. So if you can't make a connection from something new to something old, you're probably not going to store it in long-term memory at all. And so making that connection is crucial to actually learning the material. The third thing you can do is have it simplify definitions. When you ask AI to define something, it's probably going to spit out some long-ass explanation. A lot of the time, it can be summed up in 1 or 2 sentences. So what I like to do is, this is the prompt that I'll give it. Define the following term, or terms, if there's multiple that I want to define, in 15 words or less at the level of an 8th grader. 15 words or less, because when you ask it to consolidate its information, it's very good at getting straight to the point. I found that 10 words is just too few. Anywhere from 15 to 20 is fine, but after 20, it gets like pretty wordy. And then I say at the level of an 8th grader because anything below that is very simple. It's going to start explaining like toys and trucks. And if you say anything higher than that, there's going to be more jargon that you will need to know. And so if you know that jargon, that's fine, but it's just much easier to understand if it's explained in very simple language. The fourth thing you can do is have it generate real life examples. Your brain is much better at remembering experiences and images rather than words. When you ask it to create a real life example, this gives you something to visualize, and it also helps you experience it. In the example of the mitochondria as the powerhouse of the cell, if you said that that is the engine to a car, and I wanted to encode mitochondria as the powerhouse of the cell, then I would ask AI to generate me a real life example, and it might say like, imagine a car that crashed into a lamppost and the engine burst on fire. Not only would you remember the car with the engine on fire, which is a pretty salient memory, but you would also start to associate the feelings of heat with the fire and the sound of a car crashing and glass breaking and screeching tires. You might associate the smell of gasoline. All of these things can be cues and triggers for when you're trying to remember the information later, and being able to picture that and visualize it and somewhat experience it in your imagination is a much better way to try to remember that thing. AI is really good at coming up with a lot of examples, and so when you ask it to generate a list, it's probably going to hit at least one where you know a lot about that certain topic. You can use that knowledge that you already know to help you bring in more new knowledge. The fifth thing is that you can use it to brainstorm ideas for assignments. Now this one in particular is a little tricky because some classes don't allow you to do this. If you can use it, it's very good to help organizing and structuring your own thoughts. So if you were like, I don't know where to put this information relative to the rest of this information, it might say like, oh, maybe you should put it here, because in other literature, the abstract usually becomes before the methods or something like that. Basic stuff, but it really does help to save you a lot of time, especially in processing power and cognitive load. The next point, point number 6, is that AI is really good at helping you break down assignments into smaller tasks. Procrastination comes from not knowing how much energy a task is going to take. And when your brain doesn't know that, it stops you from using any energy at all because it's afraid that there's going to be none left over for when you're being chased by a tiger, you know, kind of like a survival mechanism. But if you break the task up super small, and this is actually probably the most powerful way to overcome procrastination, your brain doesn't realize, or it realizes that it's not going to take a lot of energy to complete that task because it's such a small task. Using AI to do this as well is in and of itself a small task, much easier than doing it yourself, and it will be much easier to start something because the task is so small, it's not gonna take a lot of energy. But if you were to be like, oh, I'm gonna go write an essay, it's like, well, I don't know how long that's gonna take, like, could be hours. But if you were to go like, oh, I'm gonna write my student number and then my student name, and then I'm gonna write the title. And then you're like, oh, well, I'm already doing it. Like, I might as well just like write the first sentence, you know? And then all of a sudden you have like half the intro, right? So it's very simple, but it does add up. The 7th thing that you can use AI for, probably what you all were thinking about, and it's practice problems. Practice problems are super helpful, and your professor usually doesn't give you a lot of them. What I like to do is I will upload all the slides, upload the practice problems, and ask it, generate me X number of practice problems. Always give it a number, 20 to 30. Any more than that, it will probably start repeating. You can also specify, do not repeat any topics and do not repeat any types of questions, and it will internalize that and know how to do that. It's a lot faster than creating them yourself. I would always recommend that if you can and you have time, you should create them yourself, because not only will you have to internalize the information, but you'll also be able to teach it to someone else, or, you know, in this case to yourself. But that's how you really know that you know something, is when you can ask questions for other people to answer and you can answer them. And on the same vein, tip number 8 is that you can use AI to make full practice tests. This one is probably one of the most powerful things you can do. So what I recommend you do for this is you ask AI to generate you 3 full-length practice tests. If you do more, it gets a little repetitive, but you can. If you do fewer, it just won't cover all the material. Upload all the slides, all the test instructions, the syllabus, and your practice test that the professor gave you. This will give it all the course information and give it something to go off of to make an accurate representation of what a full-length test would look like. Ask it to generate you 3 tests, and odds are a lot of the questions will overlap with things that are actually on the test, because if your class is 12 weeks long, let's say your test is like 3 short answer and 1 long answer, that would be 12 weeks of content if each one is on a different topic. And so all you have to do now is just practice articulating your writing, not only because it will help you understand what you're going to write and you'll get full marks for it because you've had time to really internalize what you're writing, but it will save you so much time when you're actually writing it on the test, and a lot of cognitive load because you're not generating the answer for the first time. A lot of the time people miss points not because they don't know the information, but because they haven't practiced articulating it. And articulating it is actually a skill that you need to practice to show that you know the information. You can know it, but if you're not able to say it or write it, then nobody knows. So those are the more obvious ones, but there are 2 more that are a little bit less obvious. The first one of these is that AI can help you organize your life, especially with creating schedules. I use AI a lot of the time to set reminders, to upload stuff to my Google Calendar, to set timers, to set alarms, to text people for me, even to draft email responses. It can save you so much time if you know how to use it. And so all those things I just listed, you can look into them. There are many apps, there are many different AIs that will help you. I pretty much use Google Gemini for all of my AI needs. I have used a couple others in the past, but I just don't find they're as good as Google Gemini. Gemini has some features that a lot of the AIs don't have, and that actually leads me to my 10th point, which is you can use AI to chat with it. Google Gemini in particular has a chat function where you basically just speak to it and it will speak back and you can have a conversation with it. What I find it's very helpful for though is that if I'm trying to understand a concept and I explain it back to AI and then ask it for feedback, it'll give me feedback, I'll repeat it back again until I've almost memorized exactly what the definition or connection that I'm trying to understand is, and it is just so useful because it helps you practice articulating your answers rather than just having a general understanding of the concept in your brain. Another thing you can use it for is just asking everyday questions. If you have random questions, it's super good for this. There was one time I wanted to know how they cook food on a plane. For some reason, I thought that it would be like a very high-tech microwave, and apparently it's just in ovens. But for some reason that didn't cross my mind because it's a plane and I feel like that'd be a fire hazard. I just opened Google Gemini and I was like, hey, how do they cook food on an airplane? And Google Gemini was like, absolutely, such a fantastic question. They cook it through ovens. So it's a very fast way to find answers to random questions that you have. And if you use AI in the 10 ways I just listed, you will drastically improve your work capacity. If you found this video helpful, be sure to subscribe right now because I post more content to make school suck less for students every single day and you don't want to miss it.